Yeah. So I was in went to courses and everything. Okay, so first the exam coming up. Exam 3 is a week from Friday. So that's the 31st. Is there a 31st in March? Yes. And the topics are going to be everything up through internal loads. Really? Oh no, I'm sorry. I totally lost track of that. No. I have it. I would have I thought I had everything to you. Okay, I can get those to you. No, it's in a pile somewhere and I didn't realize okay, I'll get it to you on Friday. That's a solemn oath. Yes. Yeah. Were you surprised? Yeah, exactly. So through internal loads, and so there's not going to be any stresses in beams. That's the next topic we're going to go into. So before we go on to the next stuff, if it's come to my attention that this has been a pretty long assignment. If anybody has any questions about the assignment, I'd be happy to go through a couple problems. So we can just stretch out, relax, get this taken care of, and then we'll move on. No, I want to make sure that I kind of, in my future, from the trip, I was still intact. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Oh, that one's horrible. Okay, what number? 7. Okay, let's do 7. What? Oh, there's a solution? Oh. Oh, so you don't need me to do that. You just want to complain about it. Okay, you can complain. It's correct. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, do you ever get to the point where you're like, uh-oh, that's a bad sign. My solution matches Gaio. I wonder where I made a mistake. Yeah. Yeah. Nine. Okay. That sounds like a challenge. Okay, so you got a pin joint in the middle. Anybody have any garlic for that egg? Anyone have a backpack full of garlic? Let's see. So 15,000 newtons per meter. 10,000 newtons here. There's a torque over here. This is 4,000 newton meters. Ooh, that's a lot. And then there's also a weight of 800 newtons. Mm-hmm. Through a motor, I guess. Like the motor is. So that's how those things come up a lot of times, is you're trying to figure out the strength of things, of components inside an engine of some kind. The drive shaft, or is that what it's called? The thing that does this with the pistons, crankshaft. Yeah, those have huge torques on them, and obviously someone has to calculate what kind of torques those are and what kind of internal loads come. So that's a place you'd see it. Oh, yeah. So there's the problem. And we want to calculate the internal loads. The lengths are, the whole thing is 1 meter, and that's at the midpoint. Okay, so the first thing, well, do we have to calculate the internal loads for this? There's a joint at the right endpoint. You do have to, because there's also a joint that's not at the right endpoint, and that one you need to know the magnitude, the loads for. So free body diagram of the whole thing. Yes. What? Well, we already know it for the distributed load. So if you had this same problem, but this was a cantilever connected to the wall, then you could skip right to the cuts. But since there's this thing that we don't, that's producing loads that we don't know, so we have to figure those out.
It's 2 cuts, right?
Yeah, it'll be 2 cuts, exactly. Okay, so we have the torque over here, 4,000. In the middle, that's a pin joint. We know that the pin joint applies a force vector like this. I'll call that RB. We know there's a weight here too, before I forget, of 800 newtons. But we also have this torque. So if the only moment about x that we have is this torque, this thing's going to spin. So there must be something keeping that from happening. Which one of these 2 places is going to keep that from spinning? Yeah, the pin. So that means that there's some unknown torque there, and I'll write it like this. I'll call that torque B. Then we have a force like this. Yep. Yeah, I would just always put those in the positive component directions, and then the signs will work out on their own. Mm-hmm.
The 4,000 newton meter,
Mm-hmm.
that's pointing to the negative x. That will end up being a
Right.
moment of negative 4,000, won't it?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. And you can draw it either way. You could draw it like this, or you could draw it pointing that way and write negative 4,000 there. Well, it's the same, right? Yeah, not exactly the magnitude, but yeah, the number you multiply by that unit vector. Yep.
So one of the joints is interfering with the other flux, not turning. Can it be the joint that has the 10,000 Newton force?
Well, if you just think about what these joints do, this pin joint has to go through that body, and so there'd be no way that would be able to spin around that pin joint. This one, that's just sitting there, it's resting on it, so that would allow it to spin. So this has to be the one that prevents it. And then the last thing we need is a point force that represents that distributed load. So we have a triangle with a height of 15,000. And, okay, a width of 0.5. So the centroid is over here, where this distance is 0.5 over 3, 0.16 repeating. The area is 15,000 times 0.5 divided by 2. And so that's a force here of 3750. And now that's just a rigid body statics problem. You could calculate row force moment, do it that way. I'm just gonna do it sort of in my head. But Newton's second law says RB, x and y components, plus 0, negative 800, plus 0, negative 3750, plus 0n, plus 10,000 0 is equal to zeros. And then for the moment about the z-axis, I guess I'll put my about point here. Nothing at the center point produces any moment. That 4,000 Newton force doesn't produce any moment. The 3750 has a moment arm of 0.33, 0.3 repeating, times 3750. And would that cause a clockwise or counterclockwise rotation around the about point? Clockwise negative, yep. 10,000 doesn't produce anything. The normal force has a moment arm of 0.5. And would that produce clockwise or counterclockwise? Counter, so plus. And then the last one, so this is about the z-axis. Then we have the rotational equation about the x-axis. Negative 4,000 plus TB equals 0. This one tells us that n is equal to 0.6 repeating times 3750. Positive 1250.
Divided by 0.5 is going to be
2,500. Okay, and then TB is positive 4,000. And now the last ones, RB is equal to negative 10,000. And then for Y, 2050. Yes. Positive? Take that, Dad. Said I'd never amount to anything. Said I had to stay in the shed while everyone else had dinner. So now we have all the external loads, so now we can do the cuts. Yeah, exactly. So the easiest mistake to make in all of internal loads is to look now at this picture and say, that's a point, that, and that, n is equal to 4, and you need 3 cuts. And that's wrong, because this one is not a real thing. That is a mathematical thing. So what you really want to look at is either a free body diagram with the distributed loads back in there, or just do it from the original picture. So we have point loads here, here, and here. And there are no other points where you have point loads or a distributed load changes. So n is equal to 3, and we need 2 cuts. Yeah. So 2 cuts. So the first cut is for x values between 0 and 0.5. I always, this semester anyways, I've been drawing this, like the remainder, the part that we're not isolating. You don't like it? Yeah, I think Mike likes it. Mike, pick a side, Mike. I was looking for Mustafa. Is he in this class? I could ask for the Ivy League perspective. Okay, so what do we have? We have the 4,000 here. And we have a distributed load from the weight. The total weight is 800 newtons. And it's spread over 1 meter. So the total distributed load is 800 newtons per meter. And so this is a distributed load of 800 newtons per meter. And then we have T, V, M. So Newton's second law says, oh no, let's not do that yet. Yeah, I skipped that step. You're right. First, we need to represent this distributed load as a point force. If you think of this rectangle as having, this has a length of x. So it's a rectangle with a length x and a height of 800. The centroid's right in the middle. The total force is the area, so 800x. So I'll redraw that free body diagram. It has a magnitude of 800x. There's a torque over here of 4,000. Who wants to bet right now Mustafa's in a leather chair smoking a pipe? Yeah, something like that. Slippers or something, like a dinner jacket or whatever, one of those red smoking jackets. Reminiscing about his time on the rowing club. Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, don't get me started on that. I can't tell that story in the remaining class time. We need more class time for me to tell my Princeton story. Really? Oh no. Yeah. Enemy. She and Mustafa are probably together right now laughing at me. Yeah. So Newton's second law says 0, negative 800x plus t negative v, that's all, is equal to zeros. So t is equal to 0, v is equal to negative 800x. And then the moment equation about the z-axis. What's the moment arm for the force of 800x? X over 2. Yep. We got x over 2 times 800x, and then is that positive or negative? Negative. And then plus m minus vx is equal to 0. And so m is equal to positive 400x squared plus vx is minus 800x squared. Because just algebra, you're just isolating m, so move it to the other side. You're just isolating m. Yeah, oh, and then when you add them together, it ends up, yes, being m equal to negative 400. Okay. Okay, so these are valid for any x between 0 and 0.5. Yes. Jeez. You're starting to cross the line today a little bit. My goodness. You should have seen her in dynamic. No, wait, what was that? Yesterday in statics. All right, all right. My psyche is not that resilient. And then the x equation, negative 4,000. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And then plus t is equal to 0. So t is positive 4,000. And all of this is valid on that interval. Okay. And then cut 2 is valid for x's between 0.5 and 1. If you don't like this, you can ignore it, but I'm going to keep doing it for Mike. So now we have the 4,000 torque over here. We have the distributed load from the weight. Let's see. Let me put that underneath just to clean this up. And then we have the triangular distributed load, part of that triangular distributed load. Not all of it, though. You know, this point here has a height of 15,000, but unfortunately not the end of our cut. Okay, so that's what we have to deal with. And then we have those external loads. So RB is negative 10,000, positive 2,500. And then we also have that torque of 4,000. So I'll do that. That's at that same point in the positive x direction. Oh, okay. Okay. The normal force. So this one is 2050. Yeah. And then we have the internal loads, T, V. Oh, it is? That changes that one too? Ooh. Okay. Thank you. $20.50.
M should be 2,500.
What should?
I think the M should be 2,500 and RB should be.
Yeah, that's right. N is 25.
N is 2,500. Okay. 2050. Okay. So you can imagine, like, if I make this many mistakes when all I'm doing is this, I mean, you can imagine why I make so many mistakes in my solutions when I'm watching Baywatch or whatever. Is there a new Baywatch? Wow, what a time to be alive. Okay, so this is 2050. Yeah, Betamax. Okay, so the internal loads are T, V, M, and fancy T. Okay, so that's a lot going on this one. And now I'm going to represent those distributed loads as point forces. So the rectangle has a height of 800 and a length of x. So the total area is 800x, and the centroid is in the middle. That one's pretty easy to deal with. The triangle is sort of more of a pain. First, we need to figure out the function q that represents that line, the height of that triangle for any x. And we can do that from the original picture. So this line rises from 0 to 15,000 over a run of 0.5. So the slope is 15,000 divided by 0.5, so 30,000 is the slope. So if we go to this, this q function is equal to mx plus b. M is 30,000. That's 15,000 divided by 0.5. But now this thing, usually on these we have a y-intercept of 0. But if you continue this line x equals 0, you have this negative value. It would actually, since it crosses 0 right at the midpoint, it's going to end up at negative 15,000. And so the y-intercept here is negative 15,000. Well, the y-intercept that we're talking about is if this line continued, in both directions, what would the value of the height of that line be when x is equal to 0? And x is equal to 0 is always over here. So we have to figure out where that line would be here. And the answer is it would be at negative 15,000. Well, if you went to x equals positive 0.5, it would be at positive 15,000. Our little triangle isn't there. But yeah, if you just continue that line and just plugged in x equals. If you plugged in 0 for the y-intercept? You plugged in 0 for x. Yeah, if you plugged in 0 for x, the height of this line would be right here at negative 15,000. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm not. Yeah, I'm done. Okay. So what we have is a triangle with a height of 30,000x minus 15,000. And up until this kind of problem, the widths of these shapes have usually been x. Now this isn't x anymore. How would you represent the width of this triangle? X minus 0.5. Like, it's all of x minus this much, which is 0.5. And so to get the area, we have to distribute that out. Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah, so 30. Yeah, right, good, thank you. So 30,000 x squared minus 15, oh well, divided by 2, minus 15,000 x divided by 2 minus 15,000 x divided by 2 and then plus 3750. So 15,000 x squared minus 15,000 x plus 3750. And the centroid is, this is going to be a mess too, because the centroid is a distance of x minus 0.5 over 3 from this end, you know, or from this end. Yeah, 2/3 of x minus 0.5. Yes, but I'm not going to write it that way. Okay. This is my show. You can write it like that on your paper. My oldest son was so impressed when he found out I had a YouTube channel. He's like, "You're famous?"
What's your message?
I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, it's probably just whatever one the fewest people come to class for. So I don't think there's a lot of traffic outside of class. Okay, so now we're going to rewrite this, the free body diagram. We have the torque of 4,000 at the midpoint of the whole beam. So over here somewhere, we have a force vector of, what was that, negative 10,000, positive 2050. Bless you. And then we have the torque here of 4,000. And then we have, at the midpoint of our piece, we have the force from the weight. What was that? 800x, yep. And then, this is getting a little messy, but 2/3 of the way from the beam's midpoint to the end, we have the point force representing that triangular distributed load, which is 15,000 x squared minus 15,000x plus 3750. And then the internal loads. All right, so now we can calculate this. Newton's second law says 0, negative 800x plus, okay, now this gets, you have to be careful with this stuff. This is a positive value. If you needed to verify that to yourself, how would you do that? Just plug in one of the x values in our range, exactly. So plug in like x equals 0.75 or something, you'll see that's positive. But that's positive going down, okay? So we have to multiply this positive value times a unit vector of 0, negative 1. And that changes all those signs in the vector. So we have like 0, negative 15,000 x squared plus 15,000 x minus 3750. And then plus t minus v. Yeah. Yes. So negative 10,000, positive 2050, and then the internal loads. Plus t negative v is equal to zeros. No, don't include that. That would be, you can't see that because I didn't count this. I found the peer pressure, but that 10,000 is over here. Yeah, I know. T. Yep.
Triangular load, because part of it has a load, so another part didn't have the y-intercept, but then we did it as going this way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just so here's what you're doing. If you just remember that this is x, well, this is the height of the distributed load. When x is equal to 0.5, we had a value of 15,000. Oh, this is supposed to be, well, yeah, right. This is 1. You're right. Okay, so this is 1. And at 0, the value of that line is 0. No. 0.50. Right. Yeah. And then, so if you continue that line all the way to the left end of the beam, this value is negative 15,000. So how would you come up? So what would be the equation representing that line? You don't, this isn't shown. This isn't shown in the problem. Only this part's shown. But if you continue that line, this is what it would do. So what's the y-intercept for that line? Well, when you get to the y-axis, it's negative 15,000. Right. Yeah, you have to, there's going to be a y-intercept anytime the distributed load height, or the function representing that distributed load, would not be at 0 at the left endpoint. Yep. Okay, so we have T is equal to positive 10,000. V, this is going to be a mess, is negative 15,000x squared. That's a negative and a 14,002. Oh, 800, yes, right. Plus 14,200x minus and then the moment equation about the z-axis. So our about point is always here on these cuts. We have, what's the moment arm for this 800x force? X over. And is that positive or negative? And then what about it's only going to be the vertical component of this point force, the 2050. What's the moment arm for that 2050? 0.5. So the distance between this and this don't change as the end moves, right? That's always going to be a distance of 0.5. So 0.5 times 2050, and then is that positive or negative? Yep. So 0.5 times 2050, that's positive. And then we have the really horrible one. So what we have here, this distance is 0.5. This distance is, I drew it up here, 2/3 times the quantity x minus 0.5. And so the total distance is, let's see, 2/3 x plus 0.16 repeating, I think. So the moment arm is 2x over 3 plus 0.16 repeating. The force is this thing, 15,000x squared minus 15,000x plus 3750. And then is that clockwise or counterclockwise? Clockwise. So that's negative. And then plus m minus vx is equal to 0. And just for good measure, in case you don't make any mistakes multiplying this thing out, you're also going to have to add in this stuff times x at the end. This is the kind of problem for which they invented the phrase left as an exercise to the reader. So m is equal to, well, I can simplify it a little. I'll keep simplifying it till I get bored of it. Negative 400x squared plus 1,025. Holy moly. I'm going to minus 15,000 x cubed plus 14,200 x minus 17 x squared minus 1,700 x plus this stuff. $37.50. Fit it in. I mean, hey, that's the answer. You know? Yeah, sure. Leave it like that. And then we also have to do the torques, but that one's easy. So we have negative 4,000 plus 4,000 plus fancy T equals 0. So the torque on this whole section is 0. What? No, I multiplied that out. All of starting at the minus 15,000 x cubed, that's the Vx, these three terms. And then if any of you, after you get done with this, have enough energy left to do all those derivative checks and stuff, like, more power to you. Yeah. Well, it's easy to check that derivative of v is equal to q anyways. So dv dx is negative 30,000 x plus 14,200. That's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, two q's. Yes. Yes, right. Good job. So the q, right, we have a q of 800, and that's added to a q of that triangular function. Yep, exactly.
So if
Yeah.
you check the derivative dv dx, you better than doing the
Well, that's just easier than the other one, so I'm not going to do the other one right now because I'm not going to multiply all those out. But it's usually faster because the polynomials are 1 degree lower. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, it's a long one. So, thanks.